Welcome to the NFL Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast, and we are looking at NFL play-up props week 15 as we roll along towards the end of this regular season in the NFL. We're going to be taking a look at 6 or 7, really. We've got a couple bonus plays in here for you with the play-up props. So definitely want to subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along so you don't miss any of these vids each and every week moving forward, even once we get into the playoffs. Also got the NBA Coast to Coast every day during the week as well. So make sure you are checking everything out that we're bringing you guys sizzling hot in the NBA. And Nate had a great week last week in the NFL. Josh did not. So I'm going to turn around. Nate's going to keep it going. And let's kick it off with your first play here for Sunday, Nate.
Yeah, I feel good about the turnaround overall with these 6 to 7 picks here, starting with Amon-Ra, over 68.5 receiving yards. That was an eyebrow raiser for me. Like, woo, that's pretty low here for the game with the highest total of the year, 54.5 it's up to. And the Bills they play a lot of soft zone. I mean, that's what they ran pretty exclusively against the Rams, and they got absolutely torched. Cooper Kupp, 9 for 85 against that zone before his nice bagel last night against the Niners and their man defense. So that shows you where they're at. I mean, so will the Bills stick with the zone? I mean, they've run it 72% on the season. Maybe. I mean, if they do, Amon-Ra's 26% target rate against zone versus 20% against man. If they go to man, the Lions are the best passing offense in the league by far against man. And Amon-Ra is number 1 in fantasy points per game. Like Tyron Johnson, I respect him, but I don't think he can lock up Amon-Ra. I think it's more about the game situation, game flow. And you look at it in the last 6 this season, when the opponent scores at least 20 against the Lions, Amon-Ra 75 points per game. Last year, when games were decided by 14 or less with the Lions, he averaged 98. He averaged 110 against the AFC, 105 at home on the fast track. And you go even back another year, 30 more yards per game when the games were close, when they were within 2 possessions. So that's the crux of the cap here. His number is low because he just played 2 division teams that know him very well, right? And for various reasons, they either doubling him or the game flow just evolved in a way where Detroit was able to just kind of run it out or build a huge lead like they did on Thanksgiving. And that's just not going to be the case when you're going up against Josh Allen. Like this is going to be a high flying game, we expect. And the Bills, they're better at run defense now with Milano back. They are allowing much more via the pass, the 4th most yards per attempt in their last 3, the 6th most passing first downs on the road. So yeah, just in a shootout, give me the best weapon through the air for the Lions.
Yeah, in a good matchup against this Bills pass defense, which we just saw get carved up again. Yeah, I think the need to pass will still be there, which is what you look at with Detroit and Amon-Ra. And to be honest, like love the Lions and betting on them because even like stars seem to be blowout proof in that sense, where they're still throwing up 20 points in the third quarter, right? So yeah, I think we'll feel good about Amon-Ra getting his involvement and love the man versus zone stuff that you're talking about here. I'm going to go back to a man who I don't know if you guys know, but has been really good over his last 4 games. That is Bryce Young. 218.5 is what you get with the passing and the rushing combined for that one. Best number seems to be on DK. Obviously, shop this stuff around. Just our boy swagging, Nate. In the last 4, 219.5 on the passing yards alone. So that gets you there. If he can maintain his average over the last 4 for just the passing, gets us over. But he's also rushing about 4 times per game for 24 yards per game as well in that time frame. And, you know, the eye test isn't necessarily there for Bryce Young, but we also know his team is going to be giving up points. And if you watch him play, like he's completing passes that he was just not making earlier in the year and even last season as well. And the home stuff for him as well is really nice. You've seen him do really, really well against 1 good pass defense, 1 not as good pass defense, Tampa Bay and Kansas City, averaging about 23.5 completions on 40 attempts in that time frame, 280.5 yards per game during in those 2 games there versus those 2 defenses. But at home is the key here, right? Now we're talking about a Dallas team that is a corpse for sure. This season is over for Dallas. It's already been terrible on defense, as we know, and that's only going to continue. They also have the short week working against them after they obviously had a nice break from playing Thanksgiving to the following week. But now we're back to that short time frame for them, and they're riddled with injuries as well on defense. And it kind of seems like they're that. You know, the main thing with the NFL is when a team is now dead for the season, you're not going to see quite as many vets out there. There's going to be a lot more guys taking weeks off with injuries that they might play through if this team had a shot at the playoffs. You're looking at one of their best cover linebackers in Overshown. At linebacker again, Nick Vigil, Eric Kendricks, also that neither of those guys played last Thursday. Trayvon Diggs still dealing with the knee. I think he's probably good to go. And then Jordan Lewis as well, also limited with the hamstring. So you've got like roughly 6 starters out there, all very crucial for the pass game, that are either going to be dinged up or not out there at all. So also consider some Adam Thielen stuff. I do like that look that you brought up. 51.5 receiving yards for Thielen is his line right now. Dallas allowing the second most yards per attempt on the season. Second most rushing yards. I'll call them the worst rush defense. You can give that title to them. Maybe the Saints want to argue with you about it. Maybe the Giants. But either way, this team is in the bottom 3-5 against the rush. Third most rushing attempts to the quarterback as well. So that should be helpful for us with Bryce Young. They get pressure. Like we know the Cowboys are still number 1 in the league in pressure percentage. They're blitzing at a top 6 rate as well this year. So that always is going to lead to some nice rush ability for the quarterback, as the eyes are not going to be on him quite as much. So I do like that for Bryce. I think the rushing by itself is a good look, but we can't ignore the fact that like this is going to be a team he can't get his against. So I do believe they'll open it up for him, right?
Yeah, the rushing is intriguing here. Yeah, Cowboys are awful at containing the quarterback, as you mentioned. And I mean, I think DK realized they hung a wrong number and took it down as far as the combined, and it's now on the move to 205, 206 passing. So we probably will get back up at like 220 here on the combined. But because, yeah, I mean, you look at it, he's getting over this with just the passing, and he's been scrambling 4 times a game for pretty good yardage, and Dallas has sucked containing scrambling linebackers and just lost their best tackling linebacker, best scrambling quarterback, excuse me. So, yeah, definitely like all the Bryce Young stuff, and got to lean towards Panthers here if you can get it under a field goal. Let me go Monday night under DeAndre Swift, who I had a bad beat here, taking his under maybe 3-4 weeks ago, where he broke a few tackles. I mean, that's what he does, but under 52. I just want to
point out real quick, the beat in that game was that he had 1 rush for 40 yards and then like 12 rushes for 38. That was the bad beat.
Yes. And I mean, so we're talking 52.5 rush yards. Like, I'm not adding the receiving for this one at all, because it's a new regime here. And in the 3 under Thomas Moore, who's just been promoted from coordinator to head coach, he's trying to find more of a power running game. He hasn't even had Roschon Johnson the last couple, and he's still, not found that power run game with Swift at all. So they actually signed Royce Freeman this week, who might get a couple of looks here in that situation if they can even stay close with Minnesota. It's now a 7-point dog here for the Bears after they were just blowed out in San Francisco. And with some negative script, you look the last 3 for Swift. 12.7 carries, 35 yards per game at 2.8 yards per carry. That includes going for 30 on 13 carries against Minnesota. Minnesota, which allows the second fewest rush yards, both because they have these hot starts, so they put you in negative game script, and because they just shut that shit down. And they are much weaker on the back end in terms of passing. This new system under Moore, they are passing far more often, the Bears, getting it out quick as an extension of the run game. Just like get it out to DJ Moore on a screen, get it out to Swift on a screen. Like Swift is running like 45, 50% of the routes. He's out there flexed out. And if they had Roschon Johnson healthy, I don't think he's going to be able to clear concussion protocol here. But if he was out there, like I would like this even more, because it was only a 56% snap rate against Minnesota for Swift when Roschon was out there. And Minnesota on offense plays at the 4th slowest pace. They rushed for 125 last meeting, completely controlled the flow of that game in Chicago. Then the Bears mount a late comeback with some passing. Maybe it happens that way again, but Minnesota at home in primetime, like this could just be another elbow drop on the poor Bears. And then if you're a negative game script, like Swift is not getting handed off to too often.
Yeah, the people's elbow to finish the deal here for Minnesota. What a great way to describe how Minnesota smacks you at points in the game. Like they get those big explosive plays. That's going to help them out a ton. And yeah, I would imagine that Caleb Williams is doing a lot of throwing in this one once again. Quick update. It's Thomas Brown. Not a huge deal. That's the interim head coach for the Bears, not Thomas Moore. But either way, this is we know what he's going to be doing. You're good with passing the ball there. I was like, that doesn't sound right. But either way, it's such a generic name, Thomas Brown. How can I fault you for mixing it up with Moore? Let me go to Drake London, man. Biggest mistake of my NFL fantasy football season season was that I had the opportunity to trade a 4th-round pick in my dynasty for Drake London straight up, and I chose not to because I wanted to draft Brian Robinson Jr. We move on. Drake London has had his breakout season, and he is Kirk Cousins' favorite target. Darnell Mooney would like a word, but like Mooney's in a different situation, and this is a little bit more of a matchup here. So 65.5 receiving yards for London is the prop line. He's at a 31% target rate versus man coverage. And that's what we're talking about here versus, I mean, it's a bad Raiders defense. So like target who you want with their lines. But if you're looking at the matchup, the coverage matchup, this one favors Drake London over everybody else on this team. Like I said, about a third of the targets going his way when they're playing against man. And the red zone stuff as well. It's only plus 135 now for a touchdown for Drake London, where you were able to get that at about, 2.2 to 1 on your money for a good while this season, even while he was getting his tutties. But that red zone target share is ridiculous for him. He's at 42%. Maybe it's just because Jonnu Smith isn't on the team anymore, who led the team in red zone targets last year. Now we've got a little bit more opening, plus obviously Kirk Cousins, and they are throwing a good amount in the red zone as well. So the tutties still close to worth it for me, but man, plus 125, plus 130 for a touchdown for a wide receiver, and you're starting to lose me. But if you look at him in the last 3 games where he played against anybody that was not named Pat Surtain, junior or senior, 22 receptions in those 3 games on 38 targets, which is absurd, right? Like we're talking about like 12, 13 targets per game over a 3-game span there. Clearly, once again, favorite target. And Darnell Mooney's been out there for those snaps as well. But if you look at the air yards as well, this is the dude that you want to target going down the field, 125.5 air yards per game that we're talking about, and 83 yards that he's caught now in the last 3 on average. So really good numbers there to get us over the 65.5. He'll be going up against a Raiders defense, and specifically Jack Jones on the outside, who has given up 73.5 yards per game in his last 2 to Nuke Hopkins, which do what you will with how good Nuke still is, and Jalen McMillan. I guess we'll call him the number 2 receiver for the Bucs at this point, but it's definitely a deflated Bucs passing game with all the injuries that it's suffered as well, and he's still giving up a ton. And then they're actually not that bad against the run, 8th fewest rushing yards per game in those last 3 games where they're giving up stuff through the air. They haven't been super in those games, I'll say, but they're still a lot better at this point versus the run, where teams don't really have to run quite as much. And you would expect that to once again be the case here against the Falcons. So yeah, I think Drake London is the target here for this one.
Yeah, interesting that Kirk Cousins hasn't thrown a touchdown in 4 games, and we're only at plus 130 for a guy to catch a touchdown. That shows you where the books think's going to happen here. Another people's elbow potentially with Atlanta on the road, though. But if they start Aiden O'Connell, like if Vegas really starts this dude again after he fumbled like 4 times with his broken thumb and then got stretchered off, and he's saying he might now play. I don't even know what's up with the Raiders, man. But yeah, definitely a get right game for Kirk after some tougher matchups for sure. And Drake London, yeah, the yardage is deflated given what you said with the air yards. That's crazy numbers. He actually was damn close to this number against Pat Surtain in a blowout on the road. So, like, yeah, give me the much easier matchup here. But speaking of the Broncos, I'll take Josh Downs. Just the receptions, please. Plus money, plus 115 at DK for him to get 5 catches. I think that's a really good price given the fact that he is a short area slot man against a team that doesn't guard the slot very well. Surtain is not going to be going inside there. Riley Moss is probably going to be out again. So that leaves Jaquan McMillan, who, has faced a lot of volume because he's not Surtain and people will throw at him. 8 targets per game in his last 4. Denver's allowed the 3rd most completions in that span. And they hold people down, though, like on the season, 9.45 yards per catch. That's great for Downs, who operates in the short areas, has a very short 7-yard ADOT, and runs 72% in the slot, gets a 31% target rate, which is 4th among wide receivers, and is actually number 1 in the goddamn league winning first against zone, 7th against man. Broncos will play more man, but he can get wide open on these short ones. Ant Richardson is not going to be reading much down the field here, especially against a very good defense that's going to be coming after him. So he should probably be looking for these easy throws. It's not the Ant we saw in his first starting stint, right? He learned a little bit from Flacco in those starts. And what did Flacco do a lot? He targeted Josh Downs underneath. He got the ball out because he couldn't escape, and he was not trying to extend plays to throw some sort of 80-yard bomb. So we've seen, Downs had the one dud with Ant under center there against Miami. Since then, he's averaged 5 catches on 8 targets, 2 with Flacco, 2 with Ant. And that includes, he only had 3 catches against Detroit because he got injured halfway through the game. So, I mean, that's a partial game. Now he's good to go. It seems off the injury report. Definitely excited to tee this one up at plus money.
Yeah, I like it. There's no fear that like Michael Pittman is Ant's guy and Josh Downs.
Well, Surtain's on Pittman this week, so
okay,
bye.
So got it. So yeah, so it might, even if that is the case, this is just too good of a matchup and too bad of a matchup for Pittman on the outside. So yeah, that makes me feel good about it. Let's fade Alvin Kamara for the final pick here. We're gonna go under. Take the under rush and receiving. That's 105 total. So I'll go under that. About minus 115 on MGM is the best number there. And like this is kind of similar to just what we do sometimes when there's nobody else on the field to really sort of compete with Kamara for touches, for usage, for snap share, for all that stuff. But it also means there's nobody else that you really have to worry about. You've got Jawan Jennings and Taysom Hill essentially as your top receivers for this squad now. Jawan Johnson, who's been moved further back to the outside where he was playing before he got to the NFL. Everybody's just
questionable too.
And he's even questionable. So why would you do anything except for, we've seen teams now sort of take a page out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers book where they bracket Kamara as a receiver with a linebacker and a D lineman. It was what we've seen from them. And I do think that Washington has the weapons to do that with their D line, the way that it's played this season. So yeah, I think that he's going to be bottled up. I was talking trash on the G-men recently in their run defense, and even they bottled him up in the run game. 17 carries for 44 yards against New York's poo-poo rush defense. The only thing good about the New York defense is its ability to rush the passer, and that's it. And they still couldn't get nothing going with him. 2.5 yards per carry for him. And Washington is a defense that has had similar success to that against a guy like Tony Pollard and the Titans, and even limiting his receiving stuff out of the backfield. I know because my fantasy season ended because Tony Pollard couldn't get anything going that game. He also didn't practice on Wednesday and Thursday with an illness, whatever that does for him. Kendre Miller has been back and eating into his stuff. A lot of people thought Kendre Miller was going to have a breakout season this year, got injured, got placed in the doghouse, but he's been working his way back up. 26% of the snaps and 10 carries for him in that last game after he had a 5-game absence, like we mentioned, partly injury, partly suspension this season for him. Washington, they're also tied with Detroit for the fewest receptions allowed to the running back, which is actually interesting with how much pressure Detroit gets, and to a degree Washington, that they're both still spying the running back and holding down the middle of the field and the outsides as well, with a good amount of zone D. So if you look at the stuff for Kamara in terms of the receiving, yes, he's averaging 37 yards per game and 20. Sorry. I messed that up.
Sorry, yeah, that's that.
I had it earlier, and then I lost it.
That means Washington allows only 23. Kamara averages 37. That's why we have this at 105, but we expect him to go below his average.
Got it. Okay. Got it. All right. 3, 2, and 1. On the season, Washington, just 23 yards receiving per game that they're allowing to the RB position. And Kamara has been at 37 for the season. So you kind of add his rushing average with the receiving average for him. Makes sense. We get this number right at about 105.5. Those are his averages in that time frame. But we like him to go under for the reason that we have this matchup. We have the ability to know that Washington is going to key in on him. And the stuff in the pass game for him, I just don't think will be there nearly as much. It's like combining them both is really we feel like we have a little bit of an edge on both numbers for rushing and receiving. So combining them gives us an even bigger edge over this 105.5 number.
Yeah, that's definitely the key when you look at Washington limiting receptions. That's something Dan Quinn has done historically with his defenses is limit the running back, limit the top option too. If there's just nobody else to keep you honest here, when Taysom Hill went down, Kamara actually some of his games he got bottled up more. And now you're talking about Jake Haener back there. What are you scared of? You get Marshawn Lattimore out there. If you're Washington, you coming out of a bye. Their defense should be very solid here. I really hope Kamara plays and I'm able to get this number. The reason I think you combine it is because the rush has dropped already 6 yards because everybody's really? After he couldn't rush against the Giants without Dexter Lawrence, we're at 75 for this dude. I don't care who's playing. Hopefully he plays, but he might not be 100% because he's sick. And then Kendre Miller gets more work. And then you comfortably catch this under. Last thing is a bonus bet here. Xavier Worthy, I had typed up here 38.5 and maybe 39.5 yards against the Browns defense that plays a ton of man. So I don't think we'll see as much Kelsey or DeAndre Hopkins. Worthy's gone over this in 4 straight. He just did it against Tarheeb Still, who's number 2 in Pro Football Focus ratings on the year. Now he's facing Greg Newsome, who's number 55, and is allowing 15 yards per catch. The Browns allow the second most explosive plays. The reason it's bumped down to a bonus is because we're talking about definite rain and 16-mile-per-hour winds in Cleveland. So if that scares you off, don't play this one or go half unit. But if you're somebody who says like, yeah, that probably matters for the kicking game, it don't matter for Pat Mahomes, go ahead and fire up Worthy. He should have a good day here.
I like it. You're kind of the Worthy whisperer, I will say. You've been right on him a couple of times, including the times where maybe you get some rush and receiving for him. So I like the look here. I don't know that weather necessarily scares me. I'm just wondering what's Andy Reid's game plan in this game. And I do think that the pass could be there a bit more. So we'll see. Yeah, the rush defense been a bit better for the Browns as well. So we should be able to see some stuff for him on the short and then get that yak for real. But that's all the time we have for you in NFL player props here for week 15. Definitely make sure to subscribe to that page. Also check out the NBA videos that we're bringing you each and every weekday this season. And until we see y'all next, happy betting.